In the previous video, I shared my first look at how we can utilize the skin retouching tools to enhance a set of portrait images from a female portrait shoot. But in this one, what I want to do is explore, can we utilize those same AI technologies to enhance a male portrait? And if you're on the fence as to whether or not to take advantage of the current offer around Aperty, please stick around till the end of the video because I've got some really important information about the software to share with you that may influence your decision if it's right or not for you. All right, let's get into Aperty and see what I can do. So I'm going to open up this project here that's got a series of raw photos, currently no processing whatsoever. And while I don't mind these ones with the turn of the head, I think for demonstration purposes, we'll go for something that's a little more straight on. So if you want to tackle your portrait with more traditional means, such as using dodge and burn, we have the option to do that. And you'll find the dodge and burn tool in the top left here. And then obviously we can use dodge to brighten areas. You might want to put a little spot of highlight into the eye, sculpt out the lips, bring a bit more light onto the cheek there. And then we could switch to burn to start darkening down the area under the jaw, just to give a bit more definition there. And then we can toggle the before and the after, before and after. So you can see that we do have the ability to tackle our photo in a more traditional sense. We've also got access to the erase tool as well. So if there were particular anomalies that you wanted to get rid of, so for example, there's a mole with some hairs coming out here, we can just paint over those and they're got rid of. And we could come in and start individually removing areas that we don't want. However, that is not why we're using this tool. We're actually trying to get away from those laborious manual approaches for retouching, and we're trying to leverage the AI that can do it for us. So let's leave those tools behind and get into the good stuff. But before we do that, just in case you weren't aware, we can obviously process our raw photo. So if you wanted to play with the exposure and get that fine-tuned where you wanted it, you can do that. We can play with the contrast, highlights, all the usual stuff. If the photo needs sharpening in any way, we can come in and apply the relevant sharpening. We've got all of those options, color temperature, but that's not really what this video is about. What we want to be looking at is this option here, which is retouch. So there's heaps going on in retouch that is available to us. So let's start with what I think is the most powerful thing about Aperty, and that is the skin retouching, because that's the time-consuming thing. So if we look at this lad's forehead, you can see that there's quite a lot of acne going on there. So what could we do about it? Well, normally we would be retouching that by hand, but with Aperty, I can grab that blemish removal slider, move that up, and if we toggle the before and the after, that is actually really remarkable, just how well that has cleaned that up. It knows where the hair is, works around that. That really is a fantastic cleanup just with one slider. So I'm a really big fan of this blemish removal slider. Sure, you don't need to go as heavy-handed as that with this slider. You can set that to a point where you feel it's a little more realistic and you're happy with, but I'm happy to leave that around 71 for this one. Now the freckle slider, this is an interesting one. If your model has freckles and you want to remove them, you just bring this slider up and it will get rid of them. Because this guy doesn't have any freckles, I've just dropped in a quick screen grab demoing the freckles slider on a photo of my daughter. Right, back to the main edit. We also have the option for skin smoothing, but if I push this all the way to 100, let's take a look at what it does. And on one hand, it does do a really good job of softening the skin, cleaning up those textural anomalies, yet still leaving intact all of those little fine hairs. You can just about still see those little hairs on the face, but if I toggle the before and after, you can see exactly how well that's cleaning up the skin. But for a male portrait, I don't feel like skin smoothing is really the look we're after. Us guys like to have a little bit more of a rugged look to us. So while he would want to get rid of the acne, he might not want to get rid of all that skin texture. So let's just have a little bit of skin smoothing in there. If either the blemish removal or the skin smoothing are destroying too many details, we can use this detail slider to actually recover those details. But in this case, with the settings as they are, I feel like it's absolutely fine. Let's have a quick toggle of where we came from and where we got to. So here's our before and here's the AI skin retouch, before and after. Okay, so far so good. What about the eyes? Let's zoom in here so we can see what's going on. And we have the ability to change the eyes. We could put in completely different eyes, different colors. if we wanted. So here we've got some grey eyes, but to be honest, my preference is to stick with the original iris and then use the eye enhancement slider. So if I push this all the way to 100, you can see that, of course, that's far too much. Come on, Anthony, we don't want to be applying that much. But you can see what it's doing is actually enhancing, sharpening, adding contrast to the iris that is already there. So while 100 is far too much, we could just bring that amount down. You know, we might be happy with 25% of the effect, just a subtle little lift in those eyes. Now I feel like we could even go a bit stronger. The iris flare is another nice slider. If I bring that all the way up, you'll see that it actually brings in a little bit of illumination to the bottom of the iris. So here's our before and after. Again, 100%. That's too much, you know, it's way over the top. But a little does go a long way. So let's stick that around 34. The redness removal is a really nice slider for dealing with eyes that are bloodshot or got veins running through them. So that's without and that's with. We are just getting a little bit of an anomaly up here. So the mask actually isn't perfect, but these are the kind of things that I expect to be ironed out once we move past the beta stage of this program. So just to avoid that, I'm going to bring that redness removal slider right down. But the eye whitening, I might want to increase that because that's going to do a similar thing for me and just neutralize the eyes. It's not brightening them up, it's just neutralizing it. So here's our before and here's our after. Before and after. Within this mouth section, if your model is smiling, we can whiten the teeth and brighten them as well. But just below that, we have the option to add makeup. And you're probably thinking, well, this is a teenage boy. Of course you don't want to be adding makeup to his portrait. First of all, it's 2024. Come on, get with the program. But in all seriousness, we can utilize some of those tools within the makeup section to enhance the portrait without it appearing as if it's makeup. Let me show you what I mean by that. So let's kick things off with the blush. What I'm going to do, just so you can see what's going on, is push that all the way to 100. There's a slight delay while it processes, and now our model looks like a clown. We've got options to go across the nose as well as the cheeks, so he's kind of got this manga look going on now. Oh no! We can also work with the X position. We can change the height of the blush and increase that. We can reduce it. But I know what you're thinking. This is completely unuseful for this portrait. Well, I actually disagree, because if we reduce the amount all the way down to 0 and then just bring this back up to somewhere low, let's say 16, for example, and I toggle the before, and then you look at his cheeks, they look quite unsaturated. And then I let go of the quick preview, we get to see just a very subtle hint of red come into the cheeks. And I actually think used judiciously with a lot of moderation, it can actually help to give someone a nice healthy glow. Maybe we don't need to go to 16, maybe 10 is enough. Right, the other thing that we can use is the contour option. Let me grab the amount slider, and again, I'm going to go over the top with this. Currently, we don't see anything because it does take just a little while to actually calculate this. But basically, what this is doing is creating a very rough and ready dodge and burn effect. And at 100, I really don't like it. It's far too much. So a couple of things we could do is, first of all, feather the effect so that it's softened just a little bit. And then we can bring that down again. So we're introducing it with a lot more subtlety. So let's have a little toggle of the before and after with that. Very, very subtle. We can also add highlights as well. So makeup highlights are normally added to accentuate the cheekbones, bring attention to the bridge of the nose, the chin, and of course, again, this does not look good as it is at the moment, but that doesn't worry me at all, because what I'd like to do is just see if we can win by tickling a little bit of that in. I don't know, let's try it at 16. Let's toggle the before and after. Maybe it's a little heavy-handed, but again, I'm just demonstrating that you can actually utilize these with very low settings, even on a male subject. Now, one thing that I moved past by mistake, to be honest, existed in the skin section here. So one of those sliders is the face skin color correction slider. I'm just going to put a little bit of that on. That's just going to create a more even and uniform color across his face. You've also got the ability to remove those dark circles, but being the age he is, he doesn't really have those, but you know, we could put a little bit of that in just to help the edit along. And there's another slider here, which is one that's actually in Luminar Neo, which is the Face Brighten slider. I'm going to push that all the way up. Again, there's just a little delay while the AI calculates that, but I wouldn't recommend putting that anywhere near that high because obviously what we want to do initially is get a correct exposure, but just brightening that face up does help to draw the viewer's attention more towards the face. And one last tool that I'm going to apply just to show you what it does is this shine removal slider. Again, we're applying this skin feature, there's a little calculation, and then you would have just hopefully noticed that a lot of those highlights that were on the left-hand side of his face have been removed. So I'm just going to drop this down again so we can see the before without this tool. Again, it's starting to take a little while. And there you go, you just see a couple of little highlights to the side of his eye here, around the nose, and it's that it's getting rid of when I bump that up. As you can see, that's now much more uniform lighting on his face there. Okay, now we've had Aperty do the actual retouch on the face. So this was at before, this was after, before and after, a huge difference. If we want to, now we can go into a more creative edit. I showed you Studio Light and Portrait Bokeh last time, so we won't look at those. But I think to finish this one off, we'll just put a lookup table onto this just for some color grading. So which one we go for, I don't know, entirely up to us. Let's go for Manhattan for this one. I'm going to crank the amount all the way up so I get a feel for what that LUT is doing. I can then fine tune the overall look. You know, I might actually desaturate this one, give it kind of a more cool, moody look. And now I'm happy with that kind of overall color grade. I can just reduce the effect to 0. And then just play with that slider, toggling it back and forth until I find the amount that I'm happy with. So here's our before, here's our after. And more often than not, I find myself settling back approximately at the default value, which is 30. I could leave it there, but let's also have a little look at high key. Let's be really heavy-handed so we can see what this tool does. We have a couple of options, standard high key, but also dynamic high key as well. I certainly don't want to go very heavy-handed with this, but what I like to do, as with all of these tools, is push them to 100 with the amount so you can clearly see the effect that you're creating. And then once you've got it set up the way you want, you can come back in and just tweak that amount. And I'm just going to zoom in slightly and we'll do a toggle of the before and after, before and after. And I think it's now that the power of this tool really comes into its own because we're able to synchronize that effect across the entire set. And you might think there's nothing that special about that because obviously we can synchronize presets and looks across multiple photos in multiple photo editing software. The great thing about this is it's actually using the AI to individually pinpoint those areas that need retouching on the skin. And that's a huge advancement for us because it's going to save us so much time. But here's the thing, if you're thinking of taking advantage of the promotion that 𝗨𝘀𝗻 have at the moment, which is the ability to buy Aperty as a one-off, so you own the license and you don't have to be on a subscription, which is the way it's going to be going once it is released. There's something you need to factor in before you make that decision to invest in Aperty. So let me synchronize this look across the photos, and while Aperty is doing that, I'll explain what that issue is. So before I can actually synchronize this across all of these photos, there were two things that I applied that aren't AI driven. And that was the little retouch I did with the erase tool. So I'm just going to reset that. And I also did a little bit of dodge and burn as well. So I'm going to come to the reset button on the dodge and burn, and that's going to get rid of that as well. I think I also just want to come in and remove some of that shine removal. I think I went a little heavy-handed on that, and he's just lost a little bit of three-dimensional sculpting. Okay, now every tool that I've applied is controlled by AI. So I'm able to actually copy this by going to adjustments, copy adjustments, select all the other photos, and then synchronize those adjustments. So I'm just going to open up another photo at random, and you can see it looks as it does in the raw state, but it has now been transformed. I think there's more to go with this, more processing still being actioned. And that's the thing you need to be mindful of. This is really processor intensive. I said it in the last video. I need you to understand that because I don't want you to purchase this expecting that this is all going to be applied instantaneously. So let's say as a rough ballpark, each tool that we apply to our portrait edit takes 4 seconds to process. And let's say we put 10 different tools onto a photo. Obviously, it's going to take 40 seconds to work its way through that entire stack of edits to give us that finished result. So it may seem that the program is laggy, But the way I'm choosing to look at this is if I was doing this manually myself, this would probably take me 45 minutes to do an edit like this properly and to this high level. So 40 seconds waiting for the result to come back, I'm happy to do that. And it's all automated. So in effect, I can synchronize these and step away from the computer, come back, and the whole set is processed for me. So from that point of view, I'm a happy man. The other thing that I think you need to be aware of is that I feel that the release of this software is probably going to mirror what we saw with Luminar Neo, both coming out from the same company, Skylum. Luminar Neo, they put that out for pre-release and people picked that up for an absolute bargain for $39 before it was officially launched. When it first came out, it was very much the bare bones of a program. There were a lot of things that I felt were missing, but over the next year or so, those tools were filtered in, and before long we had a really nice fully fledged photo editor that I really love using now. Currently, I don't feel that Aperty is in a really completed state. I still think it has quite a way to go. However, after I brought up some of my concerns to the team at Skylum, they informed me about how important this project is to them, how many man hours they are going to be investing in developing this further. So do not think for one moment that this is the finished state of Aperty and that's it. This is going to continue to evolve. We're going to see a lot of improvements going forward. So it's only going to be getting better. For a one-off $249, you have a lifetime license. That isn't going to be available after September the 30th. So if you think it's a good fit for your portrait editing, consider getting it now. Before we leave this video, just in case you were wondering who this guy is, you may have recognized him from previous videos. It's actually my son, and I'm actually really proud of him for getting in front of my camera, not only allowing me to take some photos of him, which he's really not keen on these days, but I really had to ask him very nicely if he would mind me showing a photo of him in his teenage years with his acne. He really wasn't keen, but he said yes. I'm really grateful to him and I love him to pieces. So thanks very much, Finn, for letting me use your photo. Thanks for watching, guys. I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye for now.